Jessica Fern-Krikland from PMG Property Management, and the title of the track is Taking the Fun Out of It, Unpack the Tech Stack. So welcome, Jessica, everyone.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay? Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Thank you, guys. How awesome is it to be in New York in person, right? This is awesome. I love it. Plus, talking about technology. Oh, I love multifamily and technology, so this is right up my alley. So today we're going to talk about taking the fun out of it, unpack the tech stack. So I've been in the multifamily housing industry for about 15 years, which is actually not that long compared to a lot of my colleagues. But when I started back in the day, technology looked a lot different than it does today. And so in order to unpack the tech stack, we are going to first build it up. So I started in 2008, and when I started in multifamily, my CRM that I was using at the time, it wasn't a knock, it wasn't a Yardi, it was a good old-fashioned guest card. This was technology, right? And then we would enter it into our property management system, and life was good. Life was easy. The worst thing I had to worry about was making sure I ordered more guest cards before I ran out. And then when you talk about data information and storage, the cloud, it's a little floppy disk. That's it, which got the upgrade to the USB, right? And I'm sure some folks might still have that. Like, that was the biggest cybersecurity threat that you had to worry about, was the floppy disk or the USB being left in the desk drawer. That was it, which was great. Times were simple. Site Audit Pro. There it is. Does anyone remember walking and do their property walks or their balcony inspections with their legal pad and their digital camera? That's how I did move-outs. There wasn't a way to capture that data, log it in, and have it feed directly into your software system. You had to write the apartment number in Sharpie and the date and put it right next to the item in which you were going to charge for and take a picture with the move-out date. Anyone remember that? Those days? Only a few? Okay. Yeah, so things were a little bit more simple. And technology is great, right? We like to be able to divert the administrative burden off of the people who are actually doing the work. So we've seen some really great upgrades, especially in this department. Anyone go for a long weekend and come back with just a bunch of Post-it notes? Instead of slacking your coworker, it was they're on the phone, let me just go slide them a little Post-it note. Hey, don't mind if you do. So there's been some wonderful advancements in technology that have aided multifamily operators. Back in November, this last November, I took a job as president of PMG, and this particular company, we've got 31,000 units across 3 states. It grew really, really quickly without a lot of time for adding technology. So as I look at where the skill gaps are of the employees and technology that we need to adopt, it's cool because it's a very kind of startup type of environment, but there's definitely evidence of where we threw products at problems. And everything operates a little bit disorganized and doesn't talk to each other. And I've definitely experienced this. So after my Site Audit Pros and you're adding this different technology in there was a period of time where there was a tech for everything. It was like, oh, you need renters insurance? I got a tech for that. Oh, do you need to screen someone? I got a tech for that too. How about a lease agreement? Tech. Property management software? Tech. Lead management? Tech. And it's not really been since recently where a lot of supplier partners, bless your souls, have had more open door policies about sharing and aggregating data. All we want as a multifamily operator is for you to bring the data together and tell us what to do. That's it. Very simple. And we're still seeing evidence of the disparate impact of technology not communicating. And you're hearing things about artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation. We're only going to be able to automate and make intelligent decisions and produce insights off of the things that talk to each other. So that's an industry a prop tech problem that can help be solved by the people who are here in this room. For the people who are using it, right, your end user. And I spent a little bit of time, about 10 months in property technology. I worked at Grace Hill. I oversaw the product strategy for a hot minute in multifamily. And it was really interesting to be on the technology side and hear these really impactful conversations that were happening, and then thinking about the end user who is actually plugging in and interpreting the data. Data is only as good as the person who understands it and enters it, right? So when we look at the problems that technology is creating for people, and why can't we get the centralization thing right? Why are we having problems getting the technology that the brain power that's in this room is spending millions of dollars in, not only in product development, but in marketing and resources? Why isn't it working? And this is a huge reason for this. So job descriptions lack the technology requirements needed to meet the demands of new technology relationships. We are on the brink of a fourth industrial revolution, and the lockdowns really catapulted multifamily, who is historically behind the times, into using technology. Our national designations are the CAM certification, so Certified Apartment Manager, says absolutely nothing about data entry, data interpretation, or being able to draw insights. Nor are we including them in our job descriptions. And the community manager, so your property managers, they are in charge of running a multi-million-dollar business. And we need them to not only leverage your technology and our technology, but we need them to understand it. We need them to interpret it. And our national level requirements for managers right now don't say anything about data or technology. The CAPS, the Certified Apartment Portfolio Supervisor, it mentions it a little bit, but it's really in the financial analytic lens. We're really not teaching the critical thinking that's needed to turn data into insights, let alone making sure that we are supporting these, supporting the content skills with technology providers who are now coming into the properties and into our businesses. It is a learning curve, right? We know that because data always changes, that our learning has to change as well. So multifamily learning in general lacks the content to support these skills. There's no multifamily data technology 101. We can't even get Excel 101. Right? And so to learn how to use these sophisticated systems that you're spending millions of dollars in, that's a huge gap. And multifamily industry paradigms create resistance to the social acceptance and trust that's needed to promote user adoption. With technology, automation, artificial intelligence, there is a social influence factor that has to happen in order for people to trust the data and technology that they're working with. So I don't know who Kelsey is, but I don't want her to take my job, right? And the mentality with centralization and technology has been, if we automate, you don't have a job. And for our employees who are utilizing this technology and are being sometimes forced to use it without thoughtful implementation strategies or methods, they're not going to use it, which makes it not successful. So the brain power in this room that's pulling together some amazing capabilities, it falls by the wayside because we have to think through the entire implementation to hit the people who are entering and then interpreting data. Make sense so far? Y'all with me? You guys are just like staring at me like this. And the multifamily organizational infrastructure is very siloed. We have a hard time talking to each other, let alone to our property employees. And in my opinion, one of the things that I'm trying to do is just rethink how multifamily is structured. We have individual businesses in our assets, and our org chart is almost flipped upside down right now, where we should be empowering and enabling the properties, because that's the business, right? If you think about it almost like a chain restaurant effect, right? You've got your mother, you've got your corporate, but every single individual entity operates like its own business, where property managers should be more like business managers with the financial background and ability to interpret data and leverage technology. And it will take a collective effort, especially as you're thinking about your implementation plans and your strategies. The best way to win business is to make it easy. A lot of multifamily operators don't have the disposable income right now to hire all of the people that it's going to take to implement. When you bring in a new technology into a property or into an organization, almost every single department has a say. Right? You've got your data and technology department. They've got to review all sorts of things. You've got your corporate operations. They have to write a policy for it. You've got your property operations that have to make sure that it's being implemented and utilized. Plus, you've got folks who need to understand the reporting, be able to interpret the data, put it on a checklist somewhere to make sure that it gets done. There's a lot involved. So the easier you can make it, the better. So then there's the learning curve, right? We know that things take a while to adopt. And there's a huge difference between a training event and knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer takes time. Knowledge transfer means you got to learn, you got to be exposed to it, you need to practice, it needs to make sense. A training event is when you send an email or you have a 1-hour webinar and you expect someone to be an expert. That's a training event. It's initial exposure. And when you look at someone who's brand new in the industry and the amount of time that they might not have to learn technology, right? Especially for a new person. And new people are typically who? Your entry-level positions, your leasing consultants, right? The people who enter the marketing data you need, the people who need to make sure that they're entering the right marketing source, who are tracking leads appropriately. They are responsible for critical data points that many people in this room care about. A new person, on average, they're taking between 20 and 22 hours of training in the first 30 days. That is excluding software. So if you think about the minimum number of prop tech that somebody needs to have, right? You've got your property management software system, your learning management system, your email, you've got your learning management, maybe you've got a HRIS, maybe you've got your lead management system. On average, if you think about what your implementation looks like, let's say it's 10 hours. If you're looking at 4 to 5, that's another 40 to 50 hours, plus knowledge transfer time. Right? We know that the things that we do today, we're probably going to start to demonstrate proficiency in about 3 months from now. And that's a long time. So being conscientious of not only the learning curve, which on average is about 12 months for a new employee, there's also not a lot of time to do it. This photo that's in the background here is my operations deadline calendar that's shared with our employees. I mean, good luck, right? So the easier we can make it, but it's not just up to you. As an industry, multifamily needs to support the skills needed to adopt, implement, and better utilize technology. And we want to replace people with it? We got all this stuff, and we're like, okay, well, we don't need to worry about any of that because we're just going to replace the people who don't understand the data or can interpret the data. We're going to just replace those people with the technology. Technology is not a human replacement, it's an enhancement. We know that information, that data is entered by a person, and it does require interpretation. And that's another problem, right? There's a perception problem. Automation and artificial intelligence are not the same thing. For people who are new in the industry or might not have as much exposure to technology, it can be really confusing because I feel like when you are automating my follow-up for me, that's pretty smart. And I might not understand the difference. AI is a learning system that's based on today's data. And today's data is entered by a person, and it is up to date, right? We don't have the predictions yet. What machine learning will do is spit you out a calculation based on the most successful option that is based on the data that has been inputted. And when you look at what type of information is being inputted, you've got it by the person who is putting in that specific information. No, that's really vague. But take the leasing agent, right? If this person did not take the time to obtain the marketing source and they just put drive-by, your insights based on where you are spending your marketing dollars is based on this person who didn't have the training to understand what the impact of data is. There's also bias that's included in data. There's also interpretations that need to happen. And when we look at how we move forward as an industry and the things that you can do to help even pivot your roadmaps is to provide more information on insights and what the differences are between automation and intelligence. Because the two are different, and in multifamily, it might not be so simple for the people who are actually using the technology. So technology and psychology, the human impact. I am actually almost done with my Bachelor's of Science in Psychology, specializing in industrial organizational psychology, which I love. I love workplace development. And one of the things that is really interesting to me is the social adoption and influence that has to take place in order for people to really engage with technology, especially those that are acting like a social actor in the workplace. When you think about ChatGPT, automatic follow-up, your Kelsey's, right, your AI. If I'm going to work with you, I need to be able to interact with you, to communicate with you, and to engage with you. And when you introduce an individual into the workplace, you don't just throw people in and call it a day. There is a social acceptance piece where you are working through trust, because trust is, the constructs of trust really says between the trustee, the trustor, and the environment, I need to believe that your decisions are not going to impact my well-being. And there's a lot of misinformation and unclear and vague information about technology, data, automation, and artificial intelligence. The black box algorithm stories, they reduce that trust, right? So if in my own worldview, I am struggling with Alexa, Google, and I don't even want to have it in my house because I think that it's listening to me, that's more my husband than myself. I'm definitely going to have a hard time with that in my workplace. Right? So there is an element of trust and things that we have to unwind. So being really clear about what exactly the technology does is important to help ensure that what we're bringing in and introducing into the workplace, employees know how to work with it, what to expect from it, and what it's going to do for them. High value decisions. So the more powerful the technology is, the greater the risk. The greater the risk, the more sure I need to be in order to trust it. So things like employment, housing, and investments require holding more than an algorithm accountable. You even look at screening decisions, right? Even in 2016, when HUD issued guidance requiring that criminal reports be individually reviewed to evaluate that person's relative risk to the health and safety of the property, it removed that barrier from that automatic decline. And we know that with screening reports, it's based on behavioral patterns of how likely you are to pay your rent. So those things are based on patterns and activities that are gleaned from property management systems, that are gleaned from screening companies. And we know that there is a disparate impact in how certain demographics are represented. And so when we're making hard and fast decisions on whether or not you get housing, it requires a human being to interpret results to make sure that we are being fair and consistent. Because again, those behavior and rent paying patterns are only available up to today. not necessarily predicting the future. And if you look at the rent paying ability and habits over the last 2 years, you can imagine how we might be screening people out instead of screening people in. Does that make sense? Yeah. And this is my favorite one. There is, with human beings, cultural and morality norms that have an implied sense of justice, right? The golden rule. Treat people better than you treat yourself, or do to others as you would expect done unto you. So that implied sense of justice that is driven from human norms is what makes a handshake more powerful than automation. So if I am a renter, it's going to be hard for me to completely lease online, right? Housing's a high value decision, because if I don't get approved, or if I have a problem, or if I'm giving my money somewhere, I'm going to want to know that I can hold a person accountable, because algorithms don't owe me any sense of justice. There's no empathy. There's no cognitive ability. They are, at best, systems of determinism that only help you get in the best position to make a decision, which is why they are a human enhancement, not a human replacement. Giving myself a little time check. Okay. And so this is the adapted unified theory of acceptance and use of technology model. So this was actually introduced in 2003, and it says lots of different things, but it does explain how people interact and engage with technology. And it actually explains about 70% of how people do and why they do or do not implement and use technology. So there are 3 big constructs that go and influence whether or not people will use it. So the usage of the technology. And that is your performance expectancy. Is the technology that I'm going to use going to help me perform my job better? If I don't see the value, I'm not going to use it. The second is effort expectancy. How hard is this going to be for me to do? Right? Is there a lot of manual entry? Is this going to be a pain in the neck? So if I have to expel a lot or a high level of effort, my likeliness of using it goes down. The other is social influence. How do we communicate with these different pieces of technology, and how are employees involved in the process? I always say no investment, no commitment. Like when I clean my daughter's room for her, it's messy in about 24 hours. But when she cleans it, if you even put one thing in there, she is upset, right? Because she has invested her time and her effort and her energy into it. A big miss when we are looking at technology is not involving the end user or the stakeholders in the decisions. So when we're evaluating at the top level, a lot of the times we get it right, but we can only predict how the property employees who are actually using it, what their feedback is. Involving them in more decisions is going to help make sure the technology is successful, because that's how you build champions of initiatives as well. So the last construct is the facilities condition, and this is going to influence the use behavior. So how well do I use it? That's training. It's training. It is how other people feel about it. If it is a negative aspect at my property, like, I don't like that technology, this is just annoying, then other people are more likely to think that too. So what is the perception of the technology that you are implementing? And so those constructs are then laid against gender, age, experience, exposure to technology, and states how an individual is actually going to interact with that technology. So again, this explains about 70% of how well people engage, interact, adopt, and use technology. So there's a lot of research out here, but when you are evaluating how you want to implement technology, it's a good idea to start looking at the person. We know that people learn different ways. It's not always cut and dry. And so even having different tracks like beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and what are the things behind this concept that we need to make sure are taught first. So if I'm going to roll out a new CRM, I need to make sure that my leasing team understands the impact and the value of the data, how it applies to them, how easy it is, make sure I get everyone rallied around it, and then ensure that my enablement goals support that person's experience and exposure and personal perceptions to technology. And it will take time, but it needs to be thoughtful because these are the things that you're up against when you're implementing. And I think that this is the big miss. This piece is what's making it really hard to fully centralize, to get the technology adoptions, because we need to look at the psychological aspects of trust and user adoption and engagement when we are implementing. So this is what we need. This is what multifamily operators need. We need property management intelligence. We need cognitive reasoning. We need the human element. We need data. We need insights. But we also need more buzzwords and more clarity. I've never built a more robust library of buzzwords and jargon in my life than when I worked in prop tech. And what does it actually mean? Right? I'm sure you have these beautiful roadmaps full of operational efficiency, enablement, strategy, methods, tools. What does it do? Right? What does it do? Remember that if I don't know it's clear, it might make me not trust it as much. When we went into the lockdowns, that social isolation is very unnatural for human beings. And what it did is it caused our level of suspicion to go up with new things, especially technology. We were forced to use things that some folks weren't comfortable with, looking at the adoption theory. And so helping folks understand what exactly the technology does, or if it's your initiative, how is it going to impact your business? More integration and aggregation between technology partners. Again, bring it all together and just tell us what to do. I will not work with technology providers who don't talk to each other. It's a waste of time. And there will be other industries that start infiltrating multifamily if we don't get it done, because there is lots of things out there that already have business models that are designed to talk to each other. So that old, I'm not going to play nice in the sandbox, don't worry. No one's going to steal your genius. They can't do that. They're not you. They don't have the brains that are on your team. But the best thing that you can do for multifamily operators is integrate your data, have it talk to each other, and be the person who pulls the best insights, right? That's key. Collective efforts towards education and acceptance. As an industry, that's where we need to work towards. If we truly want technology adoption, all of the sophisticated things that technology can do, we need to be able to support the skill set that makes us become experts. And value propositions that define an impact in enabling our property management agreements. There's a small construct of things that multifamily operators are legally bound to our clients. Maybe it's an ownership entity, whomever, but there are areas that says this is where you need to perform. Marketing, leasing, legal compliance, maintenance and operations. You can look it up. Property management agreements are very easy to Google. Those are the sections you need to enable. Everything else almost falls by the wayside because that's the main focus, because we're contractually obligated to deliver across the PMA. And when you can do that, when we can get all those sections and we can automate and we can talk to each other, the industry will grow tremendously. So that would be my advice to those who are wanting to implement technology or who have the ability to influence the property technology that's currently available in our industry. It's really exciting, and we don't want to forget the human element. And this is my favorite quote about technology, is to automate the routine and humanize the exception. Oh, right on the dot. I've got 1 minute for any questions. Actually, we do have to move on. I'm sorry. So thank you.
I appreciate it.